Welcome to Letting It Go, your safe place to learn and talk about your emotions. Yep, we're going there, people. I'm Mary Jo Van Horn, and I'm excited to spend the next hour with you. And today I want to start with talking about limiting beliefs. Now, I have coaches telling me not to talk about limiting beliefs, that people don't want to hear it, but I just have to, right? Because your limiting beliefs is what is holding you back. Your limiting beliefs are what's holding your kids back, right? They're holding people back from doing what you really want to do. And it's our limiting beliefs that cause our negative emotions. So before I take any calls today, I'm going to talk a little bit about limiting beliefs. And limiting beliefs are untrue thoughts you believe to be true. This is how it works. As kids, when something bad happens, our brains are not developed enough to understand what's really going on. So in order to make sense of things, we make stuff up. There's nothing more important than that we feel safe, especially as kids. And making sense of things helps us to feel safe. So what we make up is untrue and always some form of not enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not strong enough. I'm not pretty enough. I'm not whatever enough. Whenever something bad happens, those thoughts get validated over and over and over. And the ones we validate the most become our limiting beliefs. They sit mostly or totally in our subconscious, so we're not even aware that they exist. And that's important to know because our actions will always line up with what we believe to be true for us, whether we're aware of those beliefs or not, right? Our actions will always, immediately or eventually, line up with what we believe to be true for us, whether we are aware of those beliefs or not. So as we grow older, we set out to prove to the world that our limiting beliefs are not true. But subconsciously, we believe that they are. And that creates internal conflict, right? And that's the catalyst for our negative emotions. That's what brings about our negative emotions, is that conflict between, us trying to prove that those limiting beliefs aren't true, but yet subconsciously believing that they are. Our thoughts influence our emotions. Our emotions influence our actions. Our actions influence our results. And our results validate our thoughts. And around and around and around it goes. If you just think of it as like this big circle, and at the top of the circle are your thoughts. And then a quarter way down that circle to the right, are your emotions. So your actions influence your emotions. Then at the bottom are your results, right? And your emotion or your actions influence your results. And then halfway up the circle, your results validate your thoughts. And then you're back up to the top of the circle with your thoughts, right? And a belief is just thoughts that you believe to be true. So those are your limiting beliefs. Does that make sense? I wanted to just share a little bit about that because limiting beliefs and this work around them is at the core of what I do. And I am so passionate about it that I just have to talk about it. I feel very compelled to talk about it. And I think it's what is missing for a lot of us, adults, teens, kids, everyone. So if that makes sense, or if you've done some work around limiting beliefs, or if you're more curious and want to hear more about limiting beliefs, call in and let me know, right? I'd love to talk to you today. The call-in number here at URL Radio is area code 701-751-0838. Okay, call in. Love to visit with you. If you listened to our show last week and there's something you'd like to talk about or share around that, I'd love to hear from you. So how does our limiting beliefs show up in real life? Okay, it's right. It maybe made sense in theory, but Mary Jo, what do you really mean here? Okay, so let me show you, or let me share with you. So I will share my own example of a limiting belief that I created during childhood. Now, me growing up, my mom yelled a lot. And I just want to say for everybody to hear, I love my mom and my mom loves me. So that's all good. But growing up, my experience was that she yelled a lot. And one of her, I think it was her go-to phrase was, haven't you got a blank, blank brain in your head? Right? So as a kid, my brain wasn't developed enough to understand that, she wasn't really mad about, that I had dropped a plate on the floor or that there were clothes, laying on the floor in my bedroom. I didn't know that she was frustrated about something or someone else. And that was just the last thing that she needed, before she had to vent. And so when I heard that phrase over and over and over, haven't you got a blank, blank brain in your head? Now, of course, I knew I had a brain in my head, but there was something about that, right, that didn't make sense to me. When people we love hurt our feelings or, yell at us or, hit us or something like that, that just doesn't feel good. It doesn't make sense to us. And so I subconsciously created the belief that I was stupid or I wasn't smart enough. And as I look back, when I started doing this work for myself and really got clear on some of my limiting beliefs, and this one in particular, I can now look back and remember how many times I would say to myself, Mary Jo, how could you be so dumb to not know that? Or how could you be so dumb, to not see that coming? Or how could you be so dumb to not figure that out? Right? And consciously, if somebody would have said to me, well, Mary Jo, I think your problem is that, you don't think you're smart enough. I would have said, I absolutely disagree with that, because consciously I knew that I got good grades all through school. Struggled a little bit in college, and that was like the most difficult time for me. Those first 2 years were more difficult because I didn't get such great grades. But otherwise, I got really good grades. I did really well in my career. And I, had a career in media and advertising before I went out on my own. And, I did really, really well. So consciously, I would have never believed anybody had they told me that, I was carrying this limiting belief that I wasn't smart enough. But once I did the work and I dug deeper, yeah, it was very, very clear to me that that was a limiting belief. And I could see how that showed up for me. Because we set out, right? We set out to prove to the world that it's not true. And until you become aware of that limiting belief that you're carrying, right, you're not going to change it. Because you can't change what you are unaware of or, what you don't acknowledge. So here's another example, and I found this one fascinating because this is really like we create these beliefs in childhood. And I found this one really fascinating because it came from, I'm going to say a little girl that was maybe 6. I'm going to say about 6 years old. And actually it came from reality TV. It was one of the Teen Mom shows. And I don't know the names off the top of my head. So I'm going to say this one mom who was featured on the show had twin girls. And I'm going to say they were about 6 years old. And one was born healthy and the other one was not. The other one has a lot of health issues. And the girl that was born healthy was acting out a lot, was being very defiant, was being mean to her twin sister, wasn't paying attention, wasn't listening to her mom and dad, and they were really, really struggling with it. And in this one episode, it showed the mom had taken the girl, the healthy twin, and to a park, and they were swinging, and she was asking her questions around what was going on. And finally, the little girl says something about that it was her fault that her sister was born sick, right? That has the problems that she has. And of course, the mom looked at her and just, was like incredulously said, "Why would you think that? That's absolutely not true. Why, what would make you think that?" And the little girl says, "Because maybe I took up too much room when we were both in your tummy." And I found that just fascinating that's what she needed to believe in order to make sense of things. So as this little girl, right, she couldn't figure out, it didn't make sense to her why she was born healthy, but her twin sister wasn't. And so she made up something, right? It goes back to, as kids, we will make up something, and what we know the best is ourselves. So we will make up something about ourselves in order for things to make sense. Because if they don't make sense, right, our whole world falls apart. That's how it works. And I found that one fascinating because it really did come from a 6 or maybe a 7-year-old. Another example is a client of mine that's currently in my program, The Power of Joy. And when she came to me, to do this program, the one thing she wanted to change the most about her life was to come home from work and want to do stuff, right? Instead of what she was doing, which was coming home from work and eating fast food and sitting in front of the TV for the rest of the night. And she kind of justified it by saying, but that's how I de-stress. So yeah, maybe I need some help around my stress. So our work together became about, digging into why she was so stressed out. And we just took a look at her childhood experiences and did a little exploring. And, most people want to ignore or dismiss or, sweep those childhood experiences that didn't feel good right under the rug, never to be seen from again or heard from or felt. But it's only when we dig them up and put them like smack dab in front of our faces from a place of love, that you can actually start reconciling them. And so her parents were, as a kid, her parents were always busy working, okay, and would often go off on weekends to get away from the stress of their work, and leaving this gal to take care of her little brother. Now, she wasn't that old, and I think she was only 10, maybe years old when she was sharing this particular experience with me. And she said her little brother was sick all the time. I don't recall the disease he had, but he was sick all the time. And it didn't make sense to her that her parents would leave them home alone as often as they did. And she thought, wow, aren't they worried about us? Aren't they worried that, if I can even take care of him and that, we're both going to be okay? And through all of that, in order to make sense of things, she made up the limiting belief that worrying about loved ones was how you express love for them, right? It's the only thing that made sense to her. Well, it must be their way of showing us love, right? Because that's what parents are supposed to do, right? That's what kids are supposed to feel, love from their parents. And so from those experiences as an adult, she unknowingly created stressful situations for herself and for her family as a way of expressing her love for them, right? She needed stress in her life in order to show love. Now, on the outside looking in, it seems, kind of crazy, doesn't it? Who would do that? But again, right, that belief sat in her subconscious. And it wasn't until she became aware of it that she was able to start changing it, right? That gave her that awareness into, oh my goodness, that I have been believing that, right? That awareness gave her the ability to release needing to feel stressed out as a way of expressing love for her family. This is how limiting beliefs show up in real life. And becoming aware of limiting beliefs allows you to start consciously changing, right? Changing your actions, right? Because when you are carrying limiting beliefs, your actions are lining up with what's true, as if your limiting beliefs are true, right? Because your thoughts influence your actions and your actions influence your results. And so when you become aware of your limiting beliefs, you can then consciously change and start lining up with what's true for you instead of what's not true. Does that make sense? Now, one way to become aware of your limiting beliefs is with a program that I offer. And this program is called The Power of Joy. It is an online home study program, a culmination of all the work that I've done these past few years, learning about limiting beliefs and how they affect us and how they hold us back, right? And what needs to change, what needs to happen in order to become aware of them, in order to change our actions, and in order to ultimately shift into this emotion of joy most of the time. How good would that feel, right? To actually live in joy. It's not just a really cool concept, right? It can actually happen. And my Power of Joy program is one that you can do at your own pace. It's a home study program. There are video lessons and resources for becoming aware of your limiting beliefs, how to release them, because just becoming aware of them, but not releasing them, still keeps you stuck, right? It still keeps you stuck in taking action that lines up, with you believing that they're true. So you have to release in order to make room, for something different. Because still, what's that quote? To know and not do is the same as to not know. So the first step is becoming aware of your limiting beliefs. And then the second step is releasing them. Right? And in the Power of Joy program, there's a powerful guided meditation for releasing. And if that's of interest to you, go to maryjovanhorn.com. That's my website, maryjovanhorn.com. Click on the Power of Joy tab in the main menu, and you'll be able to find out a lot more about that program. Okay, I'd love to have someone call in. The line is open at area code 701-751-0838. What do you think? Do you have some limiting beliefs? If you're not feeling the emotions you want to feel most of the time, I bet you do. If you're done some work around this, but you still feel stuck, yeah, you might still be carrying some limiting beliefs as true for you. I'd love to help you with that. Give me a call here at the studio, area code 701-751-0838. The other thing, that kind of fits in with limiting beliefs is, something that's really popular for this time of year. It's January, and a lot of people at the first of the year set a word, right, for the year, for themselves, right? So did you set a word for 2019? And here's what I want you to know as it relates to that, or setting, intentions. In order for that to show up for you, to come into your life and to stay for good, you have to make room for it. And so to make room for something, you have to let go of something first. So what do you have to let go of to make room for your word? Have you thought about that when you set your word? Because we only have so much room, right, inside of us. And if we're experiencing something that we don't want, right, we have to let that go in order to make room for what we do want. Does that make sense? So my word for 2019 is manifestation. And what I know, right, and just based on that limiting belief that I had created, that I'm not smart enough, right? That certainly is a belief that I need to let go, or I needed to let go in order to make room for manifestation. Because, right, people who aren't smart enough wouldn't know how to manifest, would they? Right? They wouldn't be able to figure it out. If you're not smart enough, you can't figure that out. And so if I was still carrying that subconscious limiting belief that I wasn't smart enough, I can pretty much promise you that no matter how much work I did around manifestation, no matter how many books I read, no matter how many visualizations I set, how many affirmations I would say, like, I wouldn't be able to manifest that, completely if I were still carrying the limiting belief that I wasn't smart enough. Because our actions will always, either immediately or eventually, line up with what we believe to be true for us, right? Whether we're aware of them or not. So I may have had some, success, which was certainly has been my experience prior to becoming aware of my limiting beliefs, right? I'd do something, I'd work really hard at something, which another limiting belief of mine, that life is supposed to be hard. But I'd work really hard at something and I'd get some results. But they would never really last, right? In that category of manifesting or visualizing. And I could never, right? This is what I'd say to me. Why can't you figure that out, Mary Jo? Right? What's wrong with you that you can't figure it out? Look at all these people all over the internet saying how easy it is to manifest and how wonderful that is. What's wrong with you that you can't figure it out? But once I was able to get clear on my limiting belief that, I truly believed I wasn't smart enough, that really opened the door. So if you have a word for 2019, I'd love to hear what it is. Okay? Call in 7510838, area code 701. And I'd love to help you if you need help on, what it might be that you need to let go of to make room for your word. I'd be more than happy to help you with that. So another example might be the word present. I know a lot of people, right? They set their word as present. I want to be more present in 2019. So what might they need to let go of in order to be more present? For a lot of people, that's going to be letting go of guilt about the past. Because if you're feeling guilty about the past, you're living in the past. It might be, they may need to let go of worrying about the future. Because if you're worrying about the future, right, you're not living in the present. You see how that works? I think that's really common for a lot of people, that they want to be more present. And so if that's you, right, really think about, how much time with your thoughts do you spend feeling guilty about the past, or perhaps regret about the past? How much time do you spend worrying about the future? And what limiting belief might be holding you back? What if your word for 2019 was easygoing? I just want to have an easier time with things. I just want to feel, like things have more of a flow. And there's a sense of ease, right? I want to be this easygoing guy or gal this year. What might you need to let go of in order to feel that, in order to feel more ease? Probably stress, right? And so there again is like, what limiting belief or beliefs do you think you're carrying that is really creating the stress in your life? And I can promise you that example that I gave earlier about the gal, who came to believe that feeling stressed and worrying about your loved ones, was a way for her to express her love for them. I can guarantee you that consciously she did not think that. That wasn't anywhere in her conscious. Because for most people, right, that would sound kind of crazy. But that's the thing. That's where these limiting beliefs, come in, and why it's tricky unless you really do some work in getting to that subconscious level. What's another word that's popular to set for your year? Focus, right? I want to be more focused. What might you need to let go of in order to be more focused? One that comes to mind for me is, well, I guess that fits my limiting belief, not being smart enough, right? Because if on some, subconsciously you believe yourself to not be smart enough, you can't focus, right? You're not capable. So if your word for 2019 is focus, consider what might you be thinking or believing that's untrue for you right now. That's what you want to let go. Another one might be courageous. Who wants to have more courage in 2019, right? Really put yourself out there. That takes courage. What might you need to let go of to be more courageous? Maybe one that comes to mind to let go might be the limiting belief that you're not strong enough. That might be it. Thinking of the lion on The Wizard of Oz. Right? That's interesting. That just popped into my head. The Wizard of Oz. Right? That's all about limiting beliefs between the lion and the scarecrow and the Tin Man. Right? What they believed about themselves wasn't true. They were absolutely limiting beliefs. And when they became aware that they were not true and that they already had within them what they were thinking was missing and what they so wanted, right? Their lives changed. Their lives changed for the better. And that's what is possible for you too. And that is what will happen when you become aware of your limiting beliefs and you consciously release them and start taking action from what is true for you. Are you beginning to see how this works? It's not rocket science. It's not real complicated. Is it? Does it feel complicated? I don't think it is really complicated. It's just not easy when we have to, take a look back into our childhood and, think about some of those experiences that didn't feel good. But when we do that from a place of love and compassion, that makes all the difference in the world. Right? Because this isn't about, criticizing yourself or judging yourself or others, right? This work around clarity around your limiting beliefs, it is done from a place of love and compassion. Because you are worthy of that. And again, your limiting beliefs are the key to feeling the emotions you want to feel. Can you start to see how your emotions, right, are influencing your actions? Think about a typical day and think about your actions when your day starts out really, really good. And, you do the same thing. Maybe you're going to work and, you greet people when you get to work. You greet maybe clients or customers. You have meetings and the meetings go well and you interact in a certain way. And now think about when, your typical day starts out like crap. We've all had them. And think about how that same routine changes. All of a sudden you're not, so happy-go-lucky. You're not kind of singing a tune when you get to work. And perhaps you just, go into your office and shut the door, and you don't want to be bothered. Everything is an annoyance. The meetings take forever. Nothing gets accomplished, right? And it's all comes right from your emotions, which, right, come from your thoughts. So whatever happened on that bad day, right, triggered a limiting belief. So whether it was you hit your knee against the side of the bed frame, or you stubbed your toe, or you get an email, that you looked at before leaving for work, and it just threw you into this panic attack or frustration. Yeah, whenever you get emotionally triggered, that's a sign that you are living from the place that your limiting beliefs are true, right? So your limiting beliefs, in a way, are running the show. Now, what's important to note, I want you to know, is as a kid, your limiting beliefs actually served you well, because they became like this protector when things didn't make sense. And, for instance, and my mom would yell at me, haven't you got a blank brain in your head? When that didn't make sense to me, and I created that belief, that, well, I must be stupid. I must not be smart enough, right? It served me in making sense, that, well, okay, mom still loves me. That was most important. And I still love her. And now it makes sense to me. And so it actually served me. And in a way, that limiting belief kind of became my protector, right? And it showed up in me wanting to prove to the world that I was smart enough. And it also kind of, what's the word? Guided me to only go so far, right, with my smarts, right? Because ultimately, I was believing I wasn't smart enough. And so, I would push the boundaries so far, but then, wouldn't go any further. And many times it was that, oh, oh my goodness, I could never be a doctor. I'm never smart enough for that. Or I could never be this, or I could never be that, because, that takes a lot of brains. Or you got to go to school for a long time. You got to get good grades. I could never do that. And so what happens is when we create that limiting belief, we also create what? Our comfort zone. And so as a kid, right, that comfort zone actually acts, like a protector. And so it does serve us as kids. But when we grow up and our brains are fully developed, that's when it stops serving us, right? Because now we have the capacity to understand that, in my case, that my mom didn't think I was stupid, right? That she wasn't mad at me because I dropped something on the floor or because I had clothes on the floor. As an adult, I could understand, oh yeah, she was, frustrated at something or somebody else. Yeah, that makes sense. And she just took it out on me, right? But as a kid, you don't know that. And so as a kid, your limiting beliefs actually serve you. As an adult, that's when it stops. But then that's also, right, that's also where our comfort zone comes from, right? We just, I know you know it, like in different experiences or situations or opportunities, right? You're willing to go so far, but then you pull back, right? Because that's your comfort zone. But the only way you're going to grow is if you allow yourself to get out of that comfort zone. And when you become aware of your limiting beliefs, it's a lot easier, right, to jump out of that comfort zone. Because it's your limiting beliefs that are, that created it. So you start becoming aware of your limiting beliefs and releasing them, you get to recreate, a comfort zone, on a higher level. And then you do the work around that, and then you can break through that level. That's what's required to break through, right? It's really going out of your comfort zone. And for some people, it is so very, very scary. I was one of them. But it was this body of work around limiting beliefs that really opened up, the door for me. And I really started to look at life very differently from a whole new perspective. And that's what I want for you. And know that, right, that just as it happened to you, and, it also happened to your parents and to your grandparents. Have you ever wondered about kind of that family baggage that just seems to get passed on down from generation to generation? And it kind of feels like a mystery how that just all happens. But it does. Yeah, I think that's very much tied to the limiting beliefs, because as parents, we typically are, our kids' greatest influence. And so even though our circumstances may be different as to, why we created the limiting beliefs we created, it's very, 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 very common that our kids will have the same limiting beliefs or very similar. Their circumstances could be very different, but they will have limiting beliefs as well. Now, I had a gal say to me that's also in my program, The Power of Joy. She said to me during one of our private sessions, well, maybe I shouldn't teach my kids this, so that they can learn it for themselves. Because she said, if I'm helping them already from a young age, right, are they going to learn about their limiting beliefs, or are they just going to, grow up expecting, everything to be easy? And, life isn't supposed to be hard. So there's not necessarily anything wrong with life being easy. It actually is supposed to have a sense of ease and flow to it. But I think what she was really meaning was that, well, how will they learn if they don't have limiting beliefs, like I did? But I think the difference here, and what I shared with her, was that when we can help our kids to step into their sense of self-worth, which is what essentially happens when we become aware of limiting beliefs and then consciously change it, right? Because that's a big part of living from what's true for us, is living from our full sense of self-worth. And so for kids, if we can teach them at a young age that they are worthy, that they, can do the work that they want to do as they get older. They're still going to have some challenges and lessons learned, because every day of our life here on earth is an opportunity to learn a lesson. We don't stop learning lessons just because, life feels easy. Right? There's always lessons, but to me, I believe their challenges will be at a higher level. So maybe instead of a challenge where, I don't know where I'm going to get food, for the weekend, or if we're going to have any food in our home, maybe someone who as a young kid that learned, about their full sense of self-worth and self-respect and self-love, maybe their challenge then is going to be, how can I make sure all the other kids in my community or in my state or in this country have enough food for the weekend? Right? So it's not that they won't have challenges, but it'll just be at a higher level. And don't we want that? Don't we all want that for our kids? I mean, sure, I want them to feel challenged, and to rise up to the challenge. But I want them to want those challenges to be at a level that, can create a bigger and bigger impact for their communities, for our country, and for the world overall. And I think for kids, I think that the hardest thing is, being able to process emotions, right? I certainly was never taught how to do that. And I, didn't teach my daughter how to do that until I learned how. So she was, 18, 19 when I was able to really, teach her and model for her what it was like to process my emotions from a place of love and compassion. But I tell you what a difference it makes. And our conversations are about emotions. It is, what are you feeling? What are the thoughts that you were thinking when you just found yourself so frustrated? And it is so rewarding for both her and I, when she has a breakthrough and when she sees it for herself. And in this day and age, there is bullying that happens. And again, I know this may be hard to hear, but when your child is feeling bullied, there is a part of him that is accepting that as true, right? And it is validating his emotions of, whatever that may be, of anger, resentment, helplessness, depression, right? Those emotions are coming from that belief that that is what he deserves or she deserves. Right? It is tied to the limiting beliefs that they are carrying about themselves. And when we can offer them help around understanding that those limiting beliefs aren't true, then we can help them to choose emotions that they want to feel. Because every thought that you think really is your choice. So therefore, right, because thoughts influence your emotions, every emotion you feel is also your choice. I think a lot of us get stuck in thinking we have no control. And when our kids see adults acting that way, is it any wonder that that's how they act? And I've said it before, in this day and age of social media, of kids having immediate access to everything that's wrong in the world, and without knowing how to process their emotions from a place of love and compassion, without having a full sense of self-worth, is it any wonder that they are struggling? Is it any wonder that they don't want to go to school, or that they don't want to go to work, or they don't want, to get out and do something. They don't want to exercise. Because when we don't feel good, right, we find ways to compensate. And so whether that's turning to food, that was my thing as a teenager, and that stayed with me for many, many years. Whether it's turning to food, turning to alcohol, turning to drugs, turning to suicide, right, as a way to feel better. So we have the solution. I just strongly believe that the solution is very, very, very much tied to our limiting beliefs. And when we can learn that for ourselves, we become a better person, right? We start showing ourselves more love and more respect. And that has a natural, tendency, right? Or a natural flow to the people around us. So if it still feels like for you as a parent, if it still feels like, what Mary Jo was saying, yeah, it sounds good, but I don't know. I don't know if I have time. I don't know if I can afford that. I don't know, if it's going to work for me. Instead of focusing on yourself, just think about, but what if it did? Right? What if you did have time? What if you could afford it? What if it did work for you? How would that, do you think, make you a better parent? Because I promise you, it will. It'll make you a better parent. It'll make you a better spouse. In my case, it made me a better daughter. This was the work that allowed me to release resentment. It allowed me to see my mom in a very different way. I've always loved my mom. But with this awareness, it really did change how I interacted with her. I found myself having so much more patience with her, right? It's a joy for me to visit with her. I want to do things for her. It's not a chore. And sometimes it used to be. I'm not going to lie. And so doing this for yourself as an adult is such a gift, not only to you, but to all of the loved ones around you. If you have teenagers that are struggling, stop and think about what they are really thinking. And if you don't know, ask them. My daughter, who is 20, she shared with me, a while back, not that long ago, a few weeks ago, right, that her experience, and she said, I think this is what a lot of high school kids go through, and probably college too. Because she said, as kids, we're told, hey, you can do whatever you want when you grow up, right? Dream big. The bigger the dream, the better. And then when, we get into high school and we start saying, hey, this is what I want to do, oftentimes our dreams get squashed because then the adults in our life say, I don't think that's going to work. That's really hard. I don't know if you can really make money at that, right? Is that even a thing? Like, can you even get a job doing that? Or maybe they get, well, if you're going to go to college, just know you're going to be paying for it. And so then it kind of squashes. And when they get told, like, no, the dream that you want, what you want to do doesn't make sense, or it's not going to work, then they're like, well, now what? Right? And the adults in their lives are like, okay, what's plan B? Let's hear it. You got to figure it out. And then, be excited about it, be motivated about it, and energized about it, and happy about it. But, we are all born with gifts unique to us and talents unique to each one of us. And when we don't express those gifts and those talents, right, it gets stuck in us. And, there's an energy to that, right? That doesn't feel good, right? Because we are not allowing out of us what is supposed to come out of us. And that energy has to find a release somewhere. But what happens is, well, really the only way you can release it is by doing what you love to do, what really brings you joy, right? Without getting attached to the how it's all going to have to work out step by step by step by step. And when we don't allow that to be expressed, that's when we turn, right? We find ways to compensate. And that's when we turn, to food or shopping or gambling. It's when it leads to those addictions. And that doesn't feel good. And right, an addiction is all about not wanting to feel the emotions you truly feel. So let's mask them. Let's get distracted. Let's pretend that they don't exist by doing something else. Right? Let's try to sweep them under the rug, but that never works long term. And when you don't express what you're meant to do in this world, right, that also shows up as feeling tired, as feeling like you don't have energy, right? That it can show up as, just a sense of helplessness and confusion. And so it all goes back to those limiting beliefs, right? And that's why I just love this work so much. And I want to help people just like you to become aware of your limiting beliefs so that you can start to make changes that feel good. So that you can start having what you really want. And more importantly, that you can start modeling this for your kids, your grandkids, your nieces, your nephews, the youth in your community. So if you want to go deeper with this, check out my online home study program, The Power of Joy. It is on my website, maryjovanhorn.com. MaryJovanHorn.com. Click on the Power of Joy tab in the main menu, and you will find all the information about it. It is life-changing. It is one affordable payment, and with that, you get lifetime access into the program. There's a 30-day money-back guarantee. So no risk to you, right? And you also have the option to book private sessions with me for more support and guidance if and when you need it. As our time together comes to an end today, I want to thank you for showing up, for listening, for being open to the concept of limiting beliefs. And if this is the first you've heard of it, thank you for listening, and I hope you stay open to it. If it makes sense, if you've done some work around it, I applaud you for that. Keep going. If you want my help, let me know. I'm here for you. And I'm going to leave you now with what I know to be true for you. And that is that you are deserving of abundance just because you were born. You are deserving of abundance just because you were born. Abundant support, abundant laughter, abundant love, abundant joy. And so it is.